everyone. It is Sunday, July 30th. It is the year 2023. We're with Mr. Peter Terry, and we are going to discuss an interesting topic. It is revelation and reason. A lot of people don't think religion and reason go well together. A lot of people think science and religion don't go well together. Well, that's a fundamental principle of the Baha'i teachings, the harmony of science and religion. Wow, right? So here we are with Mr. Peter Terry, our presenter today. Mr. Peter Terry holds a BA in international education, grades K through 8 from the University of Massachusetts, and a master's degree in vocal performance from the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. By the way, you should watch this YouTube video where he's doing opera singing. Good stuff. He also started a PhD program at the University of Chicago and a Bachelor of Music program at Oberlin College. His areas of specialized knowledge include pedagogical theory and practice, Western classical music, Jewish, Christian, Islamic, Baha'i, and Baha'i history, and scripture. He published books and he published different works that definitely meet a lot of different tastes. And it's really amazing because he wrote quite a bit. One of the stuff he wrote was, and I'm not going to go through every list, but I'm going to say some things that stick out, at least like the words like on the page. Proofs of the Prophets, Companion to Proofs of the Prophets, Proofs of the Prophets, Lord Krishna, Proofs of the Prophets, The Case for Baha'u'llah, in his own words, an autobiography of Baha'u'llah, and then another book, A Prophet in Modern Times, Proofs for the Existence of God. I mean, that's a very, very, very amazing idea, like proofs for the existence of God. You can get that book, volume 2. So another thing that he contributed to, let's see here, he did a compilation and commentary on Baha'i epistemology and studies in Baha'i epistemology, volume 3. Also, Global Faith book series, Lights of Irfan. If you've never heard of Lights of Irfan, it is a global book series that has a lot of weight, and you should check it out. If you've never heard of Lights of Irfan, IRFAN, it is a scholarly series of books, and the Lights of Irfan is very heavy and very weighty. It's something that you should check out as a matter of just scholarly advancement in modern times. Now, with that being said, you can find additional papers and articles online at several websites. One of them is academia.edu. Another one is Baha'i-library.com. Another one is Baha'iTeachings.org. Baha'iTeachings.org is a great website to introduce people to the Baha'i Faith who've never heard of it. It's a great place to just connect on subjects, and Peter Terry's contributed to this. And then, as I mentioned, Irfan, the website for it is IRFAN, Irfan, colloquia.org/publications. So I'll spell it out. IRFANCOLLOQUIA.org/publications. So with that being said, there's a lot you can pull from. And Peter Terry's appeared for us several times as speaker. We have a whole class on the Persian Bayan. We have a whole class on the Kitab-i-Ikan, and Peter Terry joined us for this. And you are very welcome to come to the Clearwater Baha'is YouTube channel or the Facebook page for the Baha'i Center of Clearwater and pull up these amazing classes, take part in them. It's not going to be 1 or 2 hours. It's about, I don't know, expect at least like 10 to 20 hours of study. But the idea here is that you're coming in, you're going to be reading a book with a group and recording, and you're going to be able to get exposed to the writings of the Bab and the writings of Baha'u'llah. And it's a very, very amazing piece because a lot of people don't know about the Bab, let alone the Persian Bayan, which is the holy book for the Bab. And a lot of people still don't know about the Kitab-i-Ikan, which is the Book of Certitude, which explains what religion is and how Baha'u'llah defines religion. It completely redefines what it means to believe in a religion. With that being said, today's topic is revelation and reason. Like we talked about science and religion and harmony and all that. This presentation will delve into the core principles of the Baha'i Faith emphasizing the complementary nature of revelation and reason within its teachings. The speaker will shed light on how the Baha'i Faith encourages its followers to seek spiritual truths through both divine revelation and intellectual reasoning. By examining key scriptures, writings, and principles of the Baha'i Faith, attendees will gain a deeper understanding of how the interplay between faith and logic enriches the spiritual journey and fosters a harmonious and balanced approach to life's questions and challenges. The presentation that Peter Terry is going to give here aims to inspire a greater appreciation for the unity of knowledge and the compatibility of faith and reason in the pursuit of truth itself and understanding within the Baha'i perspective. So, Peter, we're so happy to have you. We are always happy to have you here, and we're so happy that, again, on another Sunday, we're joining each other for an amazing discovery. Imagine the world around us, faith and reason, somewhat incompatible, but here we are saying they're not just compatible, but they're necessary. So how does that happen?
That's the open question, huh? Yes. Well, good day to all of you, wherever you may be hailing from. I suppose most of you are probably on the East Coast, so you're 3 hours ahead of me. I must apologize for the fact that, as fate would have it, I had a sore throat earlier this week, which has now blossomed into a quite severe cold. So I may cough occasionally, and I have a raspy sort of voice, which is about an octave and a half lower than it usually is, because of this cold. So I just want to warn you of that. It's luckily for you, we're not actually in the same space, and so you can't catch it from me. Okay, which is
and we can't give you a cup of water, which we would like to help you, but we can't do that either.
That's true. But people are always talking about the downside of Zooming instead of having a live class. But the upside is that you can be as sick as a dog, but you're not going to pass it on to anybody, and that's that, or pick up anything that anybody else has, and that's why it worked so well for us during COVID, and who knows what's going to happen next. So it's a good thing that we know how to do this now. So I tend to in any of my research and inquiries, I tend to err on the side of the on providing too much detail, and we live in a time when people are have less and less sort of bandwidth for going into things in depth, and so it takes a special person to want to spend as much time as I require them to spend to read through what I've written. And I did write about this. I thought that I would just give a talk initially, and then the more I thought about it, the more I realized, no, I really want to say something that explores the topic from a certain point of view in real depth. And so I've written a 25-page paper, which took me a better part of the night, and I'm going to share it with we can actually look at it together. But the other thing that we can do is I can make it available to every single one of you if you'd like to read the whole thing from beginning to end. And then if you are interested in doing that, I could return at a later date, and we could actually go through your questions and your comments and have more of a consultation amongst us. And this, by the way, was, I believe, one of the intentions of Baha'u'llah is that we would apply consultation to our investigation of reality, not just to solving practical problems or even coming up with, in the case of the Universal House of Justice, coming up with new laws and new administrative rulings, but actually to investigate reality together. And when you think about it, that consultative approach is very similar to what scientists do. It's almost never a scientist who investigates something by himself or herself. They do it as a group, and they do it on purpose so they can check each other's records and try to get as close to the objective truth as possible, which of course is the purpose of consultation. It's not to see that the most popular opinion gets approved by people and then is enacted into some sort of a practice. It's actually to find out what is the right way to do something and what is the right conclusion. And of course, that is very much of a flexible process, because what is right in certain circumstances may be completely wrong in others. But precisely because of that, consultation can be a very important tool. And maybe someday, I'll explore consultation and share that with you, share my findings. So on Revelation, I'm going to share my screen so that I can go to the paper and you can see the paper. So here I've given you the name, Revelation, and Reason, and then the Al-Wahi wal-Aqal, which is the Arabic for revelation and reason. The reason why I put in the original language is because this is how Baha'u'llah wrote it. So we should familiarize ourselves to the degree that we're capable with how he actually put things. So what I did in the first part of this paper was to look at the quotations from Baha'u'llah that, to me, most forcefully express what revelation is and who it comes to and who it doesn't come to. This is very, very important for our understanding, because we live in a very sort of relativistic culture, which wants to be very sort of vague about things. The vaguer the better, because then we don't offend anybody. And so even of course, Baha'is are just regular human beings, so we're influenced by everything, including the discourse of our time. And we try very hard to not offend people, often because we think that if we don't offend them, then they will be more interested in the faith. Interesting thing, though, is that that's not necessarily the case. Very often, the reality is that when someone sticks out and they hold to principle, then they become interesting. They become interesting, especially for those of us who live in this time, because we're not looking for more of the same. We're looking for certitude. We want to be sure that we've got it right. And most of the time, we're really confused. So I wanted to go straight to some quotations from Baha'u'llah that made revelation absolutely clear. Okay? And to me, the most definitive statement from Baha'u'llah is the statement that he makes in the Kitabi Aqdas, and actually in a couple of other places, as you'll see, because I'm citing the actual verses as they're translated into English, in which he's talking about what happens between his revelation and the next revelation. Now, most of you, if you've been Baha'i or you've investigated the Baha'i faith to some degree, are familiar with this quotation. But I thought it would be useful for you to consider it in a new context as defining revelation and distinguishing it from, among other things, reason. So the first quotation from the Kitabi Aqdas, whoso layeth claim to a revelation direct from God, and I'm quoting the Guardian has cited this in the dispensation of Baha'u'llah. He also translated it in Gleanings. So I put the reference there that shows you where it's found in Gleanings. And it's also found, of course, in the complete translation of the Kitabi Aqdas into English as number 35. And it's a longer paragraph than what the Guardian cites. that what the guardian cites is the nugget. That's the core teaching that Baha'u'llah has conveyed. So he says, whoso layeth claim to a revelation direct from God, ere the expiration of 1,000 years, such a man is assuredly a lying impostor. We pray God that he may graciously assist him to retract and repudiate such claim. Should he repent, God will no doubt forgive him. If, however, he persists in his error, God will assuredly send down one who will deal mercilessly with him. Terrible indeed is God in punishing. Whosoever interpreteth this verse otherwise than its obvious meaning is deprived of the Spirit of God and of his mercy, which encompasseth all created things. This is one of the most emphatic statements that we will encounter in the writings of Baha'u'llah. Not only is it emphatic and leaves no ground for sort of wishy-washy response, but he actually comes right out and says, you've got to interpret this literally. Very often he says, that there are multiple meanings to the word of God, which opens the door to symbolism, right? And metaphor. And there's no metaphor here. He makes it sterlingly clear. This is like a legal document, John can appreciate that. It's a very definitive statement, and you can count on every word, And by the way, it's, we should not think for a minute that the consequences that he says will befall those who dare to make such claims will not come to fruition. And I'll get to that in just a few moments. So it turns out that was not the only time that Baha'u'llah talked about this. In another tablet, which is also cited in the same passage immediately after that citation in the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, should a man appear ere the lapse of a full 1,000 years, each year consisting of 12 months according to the Quran, and of 19 months of 19 days each according to the Bayan. You see how specific he is. And if such a man reveal to your eyes all the signs of God, unhesitatingly reject him. Very clear guidance. Again, very precise wording. And then there's a third one. Very interesting. It's I actually found it last night. I'd never seen it before. It's published in Days of Remembrance. It's number 9 in that compilation. And it says, on the first day, these are words of Baha'u'llah, on the first day that the ancient beauty ascended his most great throne in the garden named Rezvan, the tongue of glory gave utterance to 3 blessed words. First, that in this revelation the law of the sword hath been annulled. Second, that ere the expiration of 1,000 years, whosoever advanceth a prophetic claim is false. By year, a full year is intended, and no exegesis or interpretation is permitted in this matter. So we have 3 very clear, emphatic statements about there's no revelation after Baha'u'llah for 1,000 years. By the way, Abdu'l-Baha talked about this in a tablet that was translated in Star of the West and hasn't yet been authoritatively translated, or for that matter, even authenticated. But I think it's an interesting reference to consider, because it was published and it was read by many, many Baha'is of an earlier time. And I'm not sure that it really impacted their thinking, but it goes as follows. We Baha'is tend to think that because he says that this lasts for 1,000 years, that means that a manifestation is going to show up in 1,000 years. But Abdu'l-Baha said it could be 10,000 years, could be 20,000 years before a manifestation comes. That this is not that the prohibition for making a claim to revelation is for 1,000 years. It's not a promise that in 1,000 years we get the next manifestation. So here's another statement that talks about how the Bab and Baha'u'llah are distinct from anyone who's going to come after them until, of course, the appearance of the next manifestation. And it comes from the Will and Testament of Abdu'l-Baha. His Holiness, the Exalted One, is the manifestation of the unity and oneness of God and the forerunner of the ancient beauty. His Holiness, the Abha Beauty, may my life be a sacrifice for his steadfast friends, is the supreme manifestation and the dayspring of his most divine essence. All others are servants unto him and do his bidding. Of course, that was in response to the people who were very confused about the station of Abdu'l-Baha. And as you may know, there were many, many Baha'is, both in the East and the West, who came up with this idea that because Baha'u'llah was the coming of the Father, that therefore Abdu'l-Baha must be the Son. So they actually believed that Abdu'l-Baha was the return of Jesus Christ. And it didn't help that the person who was the first major teacher in America, who was George Abraham Khairullah, that he taught that doctrine to all the early Baha'is, the first 1,000 people who became Baha'is in America. Because, of course, this was the first major population in the world outside of Iran that embraced the faith, was in the United States. And so for them to be imbibing this false doctrine from the very beginning, and they held on to it for a long time. In the 1930s, pilgrims told the Guardian that there were Baha'is who still believed in this. And in fact, they believed in it so strongly that you couldn't contradict them. You couldn't give them another way of looking at things. It had been fixed doctrine for them. And the Guardian was really quite shocked, apparently, by that statement. And sometime later, he issued the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, which, of course, clarified the station of the master of Abdu'l-Baha and of the manifestation, the two manifestations of God. So there was a violation. There was a violation of this sacred principle of the faith. And that violation was committed by one of the sons of Baha'u'llah. He issued writings which he claimed were revealed, not inspired. There's a big difference between inspired and revealed. Revealed. And he had a small following of people. And when it came to Baha'u'llah's attention, he was disciplined, shall we put it that way? Okay? But the problem is that this particular son seems to have had a great desire for leadership, and he didn't quit. So after Baha'u'llah's passing, he directed one of his half-brothers, to go and take a satchel of writings that was meant to go to Abdu'l-Baha, because Abdu'l-Baha had been appointed the head of the community. And he stole this, and it disappeared and was never seen again. And that we know that contained all kinds of very precious things, including the original obligatory prayers that of 9 verses that Baha'is were meant to say on daily. So Abdu'l-Baha refers to that in his will and testament. He says, what deviation can be more grievous than decreeing the death of the center of the covenant? Supported by the holy verse, he that layeth a claim ere the passing of 1,000 years. Here he's saying that Muhammad Ali has decreed the death of Abdu'l-Baha saying that Abdu'l-Baha is claiming to be a manifestation of God. And then he says, whilst he, Muhammad Ali, without shame in the days of the Blessed Beauty, had advanced such a claim as this, and been confuted by him in the in the aforementioned manner, the text of his claim being still extant in his own handwriting and bearing his own seal. So I think it's important for us to understand that Baha'is love to talk about the easy stuff, the love and forgiveness and kindness but there's another side to reality where you have to set boundaries, and the boundaries have to hold. And if they don't, everything comes apart. And Abdu'l-Baha was very firm in his elaboration of the covenant that the Baha'is had to follow. This was not an optional thing. They had to obey what the leadership that was chosen by Baha'u'llah and the leadership that then would be chosen by the appointee of Baha'u'llah. This was not something that they could fool around with, because this could destroy their religion. This could destroy the capacity of their religion to transform humanity into one community, into one civilization. And so I want to go now to briefly to look at references to this 1,000-year period in which people are not allowed to make claims to divine revelation. Very briefly, there are passages from Shoghi Effendi, from The Guardian, that I thought would be useful for you to be aware of. And the next two are from the World Order of Baha'u'llah. It's actually from the Dispensation of Baha'u'llah, which is published in the World Order Letters. And one of it is talking about the complete revolution of 1,000 years, beginning with the passing of Baha'u'llah. The second one is talking about no one else except the Bab and Baha'u'llah can ever lay claim to such a station before the expiration of a full 1,000 years. And this is where the Guardian is explaining the station of Abdu'l-Baha and explaining what, again, the Baha'is of both East and West had misunderstood, many of them, who believed that Abdu'l-Baha was the return of Jesus. Whereas Abdu'l-Baha was constantly pointing out, do you know what my name means? My name means servant of Baha'u'llah. It does not mean that I'm claiming any independent authority as a manifestation. We also see that, so just to look at this over time, in 1934, he makes this statement in the Dispensation of Baha'u'llah. In 1944, he makes that statement in God Passes By, where he refers not only to the 1,000 years duration of the Baha'i dispensation, but he also refers to the Baha'i cycle of 5,000 centuries, 500,000 years. And then in 1947, he also talks about the 1,000 years. A dispensation, as the author of the faith has himself categorically asserted, must extend over a period of no less than 1,000 years. So I wanted to cite another passage, which is not, it doesn't go with these. It's looking at this principle from another point of view. But I think it's important for us to look at that passage because it closes the door on interpretation. In other words, we love to leave everything open and think that we can arrive at whatever belief that we want and that they're all the same. And the Guardian pointed out that unity of doctrine was one of the most important requirements for the faith, that in order for us to be able to have the impact on humanity that we hope for, that we pray for, that we endeavor in the path of, that we must have unity of doctrine. We must have a set of beliefs that are not changing all over the place. So here we have very emphatic statement of Baha'u'llah in the Kitab-i-Yagan, where he's talking about progressive revelation. And he's talking about the revelation of God and calling it the city of God. That city is none other than the word of God revealed in every age and dispensation. In the days of Moses, it was the Pentateuch. In the days of Jesus, the gospel. In the days of Muhammad, the messenger of God, the Quran. In this day, the Bayan, because remember when he wrote this in the early 1860s, he had not declared himself as a manifestation yet. And in the dispensation of him whom God shall make manifest, in the dispensation of him whom God will make manifest his own book, the book unto which all the books of former dispensations must needs be referred, the book which standeth amongst them all transcendent and supreme. Very important principle for us to keep in mind. The scriptures of the world are not all on the same plane. The most recent manifestation is the fullest revelation. And so that revelation is taken as the divine standard for interpreting all of the previous ones. This is particularly true in the case of Baha'u'llah, because Baha'u'llah is inaugurating a new cycle of human development, which is going to last for 500,000 years. So here you have these two sort of takes. One of them, in a sense, you could call it negative. It's saying that you're not going to get revelation for 1,000 years. And the other one is very positive in saying that, but the revelation you're going to get is decisive. It's transcendent and supreme. It will answer all of your questions. And the writings are full of references to how the book of Baha'u'llah, the actual writings of Baha'u'llah, is going to guide the development of humanity as it becomes more and more united, including the religions of the world becoming more and more united. So now we're going to look at the second term. We looked at revelation, and we see that revelation is described very clearly, and it clearly has nothing to do with any of us, in the sense that none of us are going to have anything revealed to us. This wahi is something that God gives to the manifestation of God and does not give to anyone else. We have so many portals to truth because every created thing is reflecting the attributes and names of God. So we're living in a creation where we're constantly informed, whether or not we're conscious of it, but we're constantly informed about God and his love for us and his teachings for us and his guidance for us. That's why we can run into all sorts of people who have never picked up a Bible or picked up a Baha'i writings, but they understand those writings because they've learned it just by being here in the creation. They've learned it by being surrounded by truth. So here we have the description of reason. Now I'm going to give you an unusual, perhaps unusual depiction of reason. You may or may not be familiar with this, but Abdu'l-Baha defined the human process of knowledge very deliberately and clearly in some answered questions and in a number of talks that he gave, including to pilgrims, and also included in the promulgation of universal peace. He actually gave a talk at Greenacre, which is a wonderful explanation of this principle. And the criteria of knowledge, or the ways in which human beings come to know, and the limitations of those ways of knowing. Very important for us to understand, because of course human beings are limited. We don't have the fullness of vision of the manifestation, because it's not intended for us to have it. We're meant to be servants. We're meant to be fully resplendent with the divine attributes, but within our own station, within our own reality. And that reality is very highly exalted in the writings. We understand that it is extremely high, but it's still different from that of the manifestation. So I'm going to read you from a tablet of the innermost heart. Sometimes, not to start with. And that is a tablet in which Abdu'l-Baha talked about many of these, actually the same standards of knowledge that are described in the talks. However, because the translation is not an authoritative one, it doesn't come from the World Center, I believe that it is best that I quote from it, in proportion, not in full, and only in order to point out that he wrote about this. He didn't just talk about it. Okay. So the first quote that you're seeing is talking about referring to the 4 accepted criteria of comprehension or knowledge. The 4 criteria whereby the realities of things are understood. And then this is a statement that Abdu'l-Baha is making after having described each one of them. And he says, "Know therefore that what the people possess and believe to be true is liable to error. For if in proving or disproving a thing, a proof drawn from the evidences of the senses is advanced, this criterion is clearly imperfect. If a rational proof is adduced, the same holds true. And likewise, if a traditional proof is given. Thus, it is clear that man does not possess any criterion of knowledge that can be relied upon. But the grace of the Holy Spirit is the true criterion, regarding which there is no doubt or uncertainty. That grace consists in the confirmations of the Holy Spirit, which are vouchsafed to man, and through which certitude is attained." What follows in this paper of mine are a number of references to the second criterion that Abdu'l-Baha cites, both in the tablet, in the some answered questions, and in the other talks that he gave on the subject. And that second criterion is reason, which is aql in Arabic. And that is, I leave that to you to read these and to, I've collected them together. They're actually published in a book on Baha'i epistemology, which is a really very well put together volume by a philosopher and professor for the Wilmette Institute and also for a university in Pennsylvania. A wonderful gentleman of Russian background who has written quite a bit on contemporary Russian philosophers. And so this book on Baha'i epistemology, if you just look online, look for Baha'i epistemology, look for Peter Terry, Baha'i epistemology, you'll find it right away. If you want to have the whole book, the book has some wonderful essays by various people. My contribution to the book was a compilation. And the compilation, I've taken these passages on the criterion of intellect from that compilation, so that you would get a really comprehensive understanding of how reason is described by Abdu'l-Baha and so that we can do a reasonable sort of comparison between reason and revelation. As we saw, Baha'u'llah, in very brief manner, very emphatically defines revelation. So we can't have any doubt about what that means. But there's a whole lot of doubt in the world about what is reason, and to what degree is reason reliable, and do we, under what circumstances can we follow reason? And by the way, I chose as my theme not revelation and science. That's another field that is more complicated for lots of reasons. One of the reasons being that science as we know it is actually a partnership between sensory perception, as it's defined as a separate standard by Baha'u'llah, and reason. And so it's invariably it's narrower in some ways than reason itself. But on the other hand, it has the additional sort of gravity because of the fact that it can be confirmed by people's sensory experience. Whether or not they are highly developed intellectually, they can still experience this through their senses and come to an understanding of it thereby. So all of these quotations are about reason. I don't see any reason in the world why I would pick one quotation over another, because actually all of them are wonderful. They are wonderful, and they, when you read them together, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but in the one of the letters that was written on behalf of the Guardian described an image that I have to believe comes from the Guardian himself. It said, whenever you have what seem to be two statements in the writings that are not in harmony with each other, you have to understand that the revelation of Baha'u'llah is like a sphere, and those ideas are on different points of the sphere, and between those points that seem to be in disagreement, there are an infinite number of connections. You have to look for the connections. You have to correlate. You have to see the big picture and put it together. And I always found that enormously reassuring and helpful in pointing out, if you want to get the big picture, you've got to read more of the writings. You can't just read a little bit here and there and think that you're going to get it. You can't read one statement about reason from one source and think you're going to get the whole picture, because you won't. You'll only see part of it, because he's talking to one person at that time, and that person needed to hear about one particular thing. It's so you when you get it from the many sources, it works much better. So the next section on this is the limitations of the second criterion. And and I want to I am going to read a couple of these passages, because I think they're quite astonishing, because they give us insights that we might otherwise not have. After explaining that reason generally is described as being a human attribute, as being the distinctively human attribute, because of course animals have sensory perception, and very often they have higher developed sensory perception than human beings, because they are meant to be the exemplars of that nature, of the sensory nature. Our strength and our distinctive characteristic is reason, is intellect. It's being able to think, to conceptualize and observe. Like I said here, the knowledge that, and then he's talking about, I don't want to actually confuse things by opening up an idea before it's really the right time in this discussion. But I wanted to point out that that Abdu'l-Baha states that our normal minds, our regular minds are limited, and for understanding of higher realities, metaphysical, supernatural realities, we have to turn to a reliable source of reality, a reliable source of information, which is where? And throughout the Kitab Yagan, what does he say? Don't turn to the clergy because they got it wrong. They get it wrong over and over again. The Jewish clergy got it wrong and didn't recognize Jesus. The Christian clergy got it wrong and didn't recognize Muhammad. The Muslim clergy got it wrong and didn't recognize the Bab. Don't trust them. They're not reliable. Who do you have to go to? You have to go to the manifestation of God. That's what you have to do. And you have to go to the book revealed by the manifestation of God and pray to God for guidance to understand what the book is saying to you. So that calls for what? It calls for reason, but a different kind of reason. And so this is, I'm going to quote, this is from the Seven Valleys of Baha'u'llah. God the Most High hath placed these signs in men so that veiled minds might not deny the mysteries of the life beyond, nor belittle that which hath been promised them. What is he talking about? He's talking about dreams. He's talking about dreams are the proof that there are other worlds. Because he says in dreams, sometimes you see something happen in the dream and it occurs later on. So how's that possible? Well, it's possible because there are multiple worlds, right? And for you to believe the manifestations of God who tell you there are multiple worlds, rather than, perhaps the priesthood around you that say, no, don't trust all of that. Don't trust your dreams and forget about the manifestations. They're dead. Listen to me. I know the truth. And then to continue this quotation, for some hold fast to reason and deny whatever reason comprehendeth not. And yet feeble minds can never grasp the reality of the stages that we have related. The universal divine intellect alone can comprehend them. What is the universal divine intellect? That is the manifestation of God. But as Abdu'l-Baha pointed out in some answered questions, the true believers, the humble believers who turn to the manifestation, receive a ray from the sun that has been reflected upon us by the manifestation. So we get some of that universal intellect when we turn to the manifestation. I'm going to fast forward through this. Let me, I'm just going to mute myself for 1 second here. You can go look at the text. Whatever I've got up on the screen here, I'll be right.
Okay, Peter, so you did mute yourself. So if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Yes, that's intentional because I've gotten 2 calls in a row from my family, so apparently something's up, and I just need to call quickly and verify that what they're trying to convey to me. Okay, I'll be right
So
back.
I can read off the screen. Let me read off the screen.
Oh, cool. Go for it.
I'll do that. All right. So from the top here, the sentence says, then the Ptolemaic theory became widespread and Plato's theory was entirely forgotten until a modern astronomer revived it. Thus have the mathematicians disagreed among themselves, even though they all relied on rational arguments. بدليل أقلية. Likewise, at one time, they would establish a thing by rational arguments and disprove it at another, again by rational arguments. So a philosopher would firmly uphold a view for a time and adhere to a range of proofs and arguments to support it, بدليل الأقلية, and afterwards he would change his mind and contradict his former position by rational arguments, بدليل الأقلية. It is therefore evident that the criterion of reason is imperfect, as proven by the disagreements existing between the ancient philosophers, as well as by their want of consistency and their propensity to change their own views. For if the criterion of intellect were perfect, all should have been united in their thoughts and agreed in their opinions. Some answer questions of Abdul Baha and Mufavadat.
Mufavadat is the Persian name for some answer questions.
Okay.
Well, it's part of the name, actually. The name is like this long, really long. And as fate would have it, my family really needs me to return the car to them, and then they're going to drop me off back here. What I was thinking of doing is that if there's some way that I could transfer this document, is that while I'm absent for about 10 minutes time, you can actually, all of you can look at the document, and in particular, you can continue to read where I left off, which is on page 13. And I don't think it's so important at this point to look at all of the passages that refer to the limitations of reason, because it's only of limited relevancy for the points that I'm going to bring up later on. But I wanted you to have all of that material because it's not easily accessible. It's found in many different places. I've been a student of Pilgrim Notes, for example, and I've found Pilgrim Notes that most people have never heard of. But it's just a topic that I've studied pretty thoroughly, and so I've put all the material that I've ever found. It's right here, and I want you to have it, because if you have it, then you have a more comprehensive understanding of our own intellect. Abdul Baha is talking about our capacity to understand reality through the rational faculty. Very important for us to understand. And so, Jeremiah and John, I'm asking, is there a way that I can share this with you so that it can get to everybody else?
That will be Jeremiah.
That would be Jeremiah. Okay.
Yeah, you would just share it. You can share the link in the chat. Just don't. Just make sure it's viewable. So when you share it, make sure it's only view. Otherwise, if you want, I'll make a PDF of it and I'll share that later.
Oh, that would be great. If you could make a PDF, that would be perfect. So I will send you the link right now.
Yep, email.
Yeah. I'm emailing you the link right now. Okay. It's a Google Doc document. So, and then you can share that. I will be back very quickly in no more than 10 minutes. And I promise you, if you stick around, it'll be worth the wait. Okay.
We'll pick up now on page 13 while you come back. So Jeremiah, you need to take over the screen and get us to page 13. It's all up to you, Jeremiah.
Okay, give me a second.
So while that is in process, as you can see, reason is not just limited to what you think reason is. It's there's a whole string of philosophy on this. There's a bunch of people who've lived and died before us who have discussed the subject. And you have, in the context of the Baha'i writings, a major contribution that redefines so much, as to Abdul Baha coming and explaining with not a questionable attitude, but a clarificatory attitude, information that can really help us unify very disparate opinions, very differing views, bringing together people who otherwise are, be it out of entertainment or be it from genuine search, differing in opinion. We're able to find our various perspectives that, as was explained, we're all independent members on the outside of a sphere, so to speak. We're able to unite and harmonize our views by realizing we all have various perspectives. And these perspectives are one and all looking at the same thing, is just from a different point of view. With that being said, Jeremiah, there we go. There's the screen. All right, take us to page 13, please. Right on time, too. I had nothing else to say. All right, here we are. We read that paragraph going down. Okay, so we went up to the end of the quotation. Now it says they observed in the heavens. Sorry, they observed the heavens. We'll read that. They observed the heavens and the motion of the chief planets, which they conceived to be caused by the movement of 8 successive crystalline spheres enclosed within the 9th and outer one, which by its action caused the others to move. But later, philosophers have said that these crystalline spheres are non-existent and that the planets are suspended by the force of gravitation, attraction, etc., thus utterly contradicting ancient theories. These ancient philosophers also said that they could observe no movement or change in the heavens. Quick question. Everyone, and this is rhetorical, everyone knows that this is a matter of the heliocentric theory versus the geocentric theory. This is a matter of, is the Earth the center of the universe? Is the Earth revolving around the sun? What's up with the sky? What's going on? Where are we in the world? Where are we in the universe? So going on, it says, these ancient philosophers have also said that as they could observe no movement or change in the heavens, they were therefore pre-existent and eternal. All these statements have been refuted. It is therefore evident that we cannot rely on the second method of obtaining knowledge to ensure absolute accuracy. Successive philosophers are always contradicting each other and propounding diverse theories. If absolute knowledge were to be obtained by this means, the wisest philosophers would agree in saying the same things. So we're going to continue on, but as we are looking at this paragraph and moving on, the idea of heliocentrism, it was definitely offered before Copernicus. However, Copernicus, and I apologize, I forget his book's name. It's a very smart sounding book name. His book that was released posthumously because had he revealed it in his own life that he had written such a book, not only would the book also be banned, as it was a banned book, but he would have faced a similar situation that Galileo faced, if not worse. So Copernicus had pretty much released this idea of the Earth revolving around the sun. He had spoke about how the orbit there's the perihelion and the aphelion, the closest point and the furthest point from the sun, and that it's more like an egg, the revolution of the Earth around the sun. And an ellipse, which is this egg, is the shape of our orbit, not a circle. And not just that, but every circle, every oval has 2 foci. So rather than one focus, there's 2 foci, as in 2 centers. That might sound weird to say, but a focus is akin to having a center for a sphere. In this case, the sphere is a special ellipse, a special oval. The egg, if you will, this sphere is a special form where the 2 foci are in the same place. But a focus, which is the center of the sphere or the special ellipse, that is in Earth's elliptical orbit, the sun, and another place in space that Copernicus was able to explain at more length. Going on, as to the second criterion, reason, this likewise is unreliable and cannot be depended upon. This human world is an ocean of varying opinions. If reason is the perfect standard and criterion of knowledge, why are opinions at variance, and why do philosophers disagree so completely with each other? This is a clear proof that human reason is not to be relied upon as an infallible criterion. For instance, great discoveries and announcements of former centuries are continually upset and discarded by the wise men of today. Mathematicians, astronomers, chemical scientists continually disprove and reject the conclusions of the ancients. Nothing is fixed, nothing final. Everything is continually changing because human reason is progressing along new roads of investigation and arriving at new conclusions every day. In the future, much that is announced and accepted as true now will be rejected and disproved. And so it will continue ad infinitum. This is revealed again by Abdul Baha at Hotel Ansonia in New York. And these are notes taken by Howard McNutt, found in Promulgation of Universal Peace, which is a book you can find. Hey, Arya, you want to read from here, this paragraph? It says butt in. All right, just sit right here. You're on camera. All right, here. Right, but
Okay. But in the estimation of the people of insight, this criterion is likewise defective and unreliable. For these same philosophers who held to reason or intellect as a standard of human judgment have differed widely among themselves on every subject of investigation. The statements of the Greek philosophers are contradictory to the conclusions of the Persian sages. Even among the Greek philosophers themselves, there is continual variance and lack of agreement upon any given subject. Great difference of thought also prevailed between the wise men of Greece and Rome. Therefore, if the criterion of reason or intellect constituted a correct or an infallible standard of judgment, those who tested and applied it should have arrived at the same conclusions. As they differ and are contradictory in conclusions, it is an evidence that the method and standard of test must have been faulty and insufficient. Abdul Baha, Greenacre, okay. While they were thinking, they became of different opinions. Discord and differences only show the measure of intellect to be untrue. For they all had the same intellect, and were this the true standard, they would never have disagreed. Another reason which disproves this is that the philosopher first agreed that the atom could not be divided, but now it is believed that it can be divided. At first, it was believed that the firmament was divided into spheres, and that all the stars moved together, but now it is believed that each has its own orbit. The proof of today is that the theory of the ancient philosophers was based on an incorrect foundation. One of the disproofs is that it was formerly believed that the sun revolved around the sun. The sun revolved around the earth and caused day and night. But now it is believed that the earth revolves around the sun. Both have judged this by their intellect. Consequently, this proves the measure of intellect to be incorrect.
yeah, and that's the explanation where I was speaking just shortly ago about Copernicus. And Copernicus, a scientist, had, and in using mathematics, and again, it's a tool to understand reality. It's one other form of learning, using a tool to explain your reality, like mathematics. It was able to be a lot more clear rather than just simply using intellect and reason, but using tools that we devised, that we're able to see more clearly that the earth is revolving around the sun.
Right.
Yeah. Can you go down a little bit, Jeremiah? There we go. As to the measure of intellect.
As to the measure of intellect, the old Greek and Persians judged everything by this measure, and while they are thinking that this is the only way, they themselves begin to differ and disagree. And this fact only shows that the measure of intellect is not true, for they all have the same intellect, and were this the true standard, they would have never disagreed. Another reason which disproves this is that the philosophers first agreed that the atoms, oh, sorry,
Yeah, you're right. First agreed that the atoms could not be divided
Now it is believed it can be divided. I think this is
at first.
is
Well, no, it's going. It's good.
Okay. At first, it was believed the firmament was divided into spheres, and is that it is formally believed that the sun revolved around the earth to cause the day. But now that the earth revolves around the sun, while all the philosophers have intellect for their standard, the change of their opinions and basis proves that it is not true. That is not the true one to go by. To reiterate and summarize, Abdu'l-Baha plainly states that reason, the special faculty of the rational soul or human spirit, is fallible and leads to disagreement instead of unanimity. Therefore, it is evident that the method of reason is not perfect, for the differences of the ancient philosophers, the want of stability, and the variations of their opinions prove this. For if it were perfect, all out, but united in their ideas and agreed in their opinions. If reason is the perfect standard and criterion of knowledge, why are opinions at variance? And why do philosophers disagree so completely with each other? This is a clear proof that human reason is not to be relied upon as an infallible criterion. I'll take a look at that.
Sure.
I'll tell you that again.
Therefore, if the criterion of reason or intellect is therefore, if the criterion of reason or intellect constitute a correct and infallible standard of judgment, those who tested and applied it should have arrived at the same conclusions. As they differ and are contradictory in conclusions, it is evidence that the method and standard of the test must have been faulty and insufficient. So I'm going to go down two quotes here. The proof of today is that the ancient philosophy was based on an incorrect foundation, while all the philosophers have intellect for their standard. The change of their opinions and basis proves that it is not the true one to go by. The next one we have, all these statements have been refuted, but it is therefore omitted in publication. It is therefore evident that we cannot rely on this second method of obtaining knowledge to ensure absolute accuracy. So there's another criterion we're going to talk about right now, but the first piece, which is simply reason, Plato is one of the most famous for having engaged in this, and of course Socrates. And the idea here is that you can reason, like in Plato's allegory of the cave, a lot of things, and you can learn a lot of concepts. You can describe a lot of things and think in very, very new ways. The problem is, though, that as Abdu'l-Baha has described here, we can't come to an agreement solely on one basis, which is reason. Yes, we want to come and reason with one another. The fact is, it's incomplete without other criterion. And we're going to describe them now. One of the others, which is the second here. Why should the conclusions of the philosophers, the logicians, the mathematicians, the theoretical physicists agree? Because there is only one reality. Reality is created by God, not constructed by human beings. Reality has an objectivity that has been called into question because of the subjectivity that comes naturally to human beings, and which has resulted in so many variations in the truths that are recognized and firmly adhered to. A brief comment may be in order. As discussed in reference to the first criterion, one of the teachings of Baha'u'llah is that science and religion are and should be in harmony with one another. It has already been suggested that science, in this context, may not refer exclusively to the methodologies and hypotheses of the physical and social sciences, as they are currently constructed, based upon materialistic assumptions and principles. It was pointed out that the science, which is entirely in harmony with the religion, is that which is called divine philosophy. And it says, hikmat ilahi. Jeremiah, you need to really scroll up the whole page, please. The whole page. Yep, there we go. All right. So hikmat ilahi in the Baha'i writings. Divine philosophy does not eschew an appeal to or utilization of the human faculty of reason, nor does it divorce itself from the experience of the senses, from the riches of human tradition, or from insights afforded by intuition. However, it acknowledges that for reliable depictions of spiritual worlds, we turn to the masters of that subject, the ones who know of those worlds from their own experience or because they have been informed of its attributes by the Holy Spirit. The innumerable alleged spiritual adepts, be they Sufis or sadhus, seers or psychics, sheikh or saint, whatever their denomination, whatever their religious affiliation, are not infallible authorities about such things. Like all human beings, they may be inspired by the Holy Spirit, but it is just as likely that they are inspired by the animal appetite for acquisition and self-aggrandizement, converted by the human genius for imagination and self-delusion into the semblance of spiritual knowledge. Jeremiah, please scroll up. A little more. There you go. Baha'u'llah distinguishes between two varieties of intellect and reason for which inform our consciousness. One of which is not only fallible, but an insufficient instrument for the investigation of the metaphysical, while the other is the ideal means for accomplishing that search, albeit always within the limitations of individual and collective human capacity. Quote from Baha'u'llah in Ikan, the Kitab-i Ikan, Book of Certitude. We entreat the learned men of the Bayan not to follow in such ways, not to inflict at the time of mustaghath, that upon him who is the divine essence, the heavenly light, the absolute eternity, the beginning and the end of the manifestations of the invisible, that which hath been inflicted in this day. We beg them not to depend upon their intellect, their comprehension and learning, nor to contend with the revealer of celestial and infinite knowledge. Next quote. God, the Most High, hath placed these signs in men so that veiled minds, muhaqqiqin, might not deny the mysteries of the life beyond, nor belittle that which hath been promised them. For some hold fast to reason, aql, and deny whatever reason comprehendeth not. And yet feeble minds, akole daife, can never grasp the reality of the stages that we have related. The universal divine intellect alone can comprehend them. And it says, Aqle kule rabani. How can feeble reason, aqle jazi, embrace the Quran, or the spider snare a phoenix in its web? This is from the Seven Valleys of Baha'u'llah. If the wayfarers be among them that dwell in the court of all, if the wayfarers be among them that dwell in the court of the all-praised, this is the station of the intellect, which is known as the messenger of the realm of the body and the most great pillar. That which is intended, however, is the universal divine intellect, whose sovereignty fostereth the growth of all things, and not every vain and feeble mind. Thus hath the wise Sanai written, how can meager reason comprehend the book, or the spider trap a phoenix in his web? Wouldst thou that the mind not hold thee in its snare? Seize it and enroll it in the school of God instead. Hi, Peter. Welcome back. So we went from page 13 to here we are on 18. We spoke about the limitations of reason alone. And then we spoke about shortly the use of reason in the context, the use of learning through our spiritual experiences. And we mentioned how, the so-called religious learned are very prone to error in their own self-aggrandizement, and ultimately their own egos can take hold of their duty in spiritual learning. So here we are.
Yes. So thank you for allowing that that brief interval of human weakness. My family is now off and running for the day. And is someone saying something?
Fuck!
What? It sounded like there was an audio coming in from some other source, but I'm not hearing it repeated. So I just wanted to read this one more passage here, because this is Abdu'l-Baha explaining this teaching of Baha'u'llah. Very, very important, my friends, that we always do this. Whenever we come across something Baha'u'llah says, find out what Abdu'l-Baha said about it. Find out what Shoghi Effendi said about it. Because sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we don't know about the power of our preconceived ideas in our own minds. And so we just blithely go around interpreting things from our personal point of view, which sometimes is very, very far from the truth. But the universal divine intellect, this is the same term that Baha'u'llah is using, which transcends nature, is the outpouring grace of the pre-existent power. This is coming from God. It encompasses all existing realities and receives its share of the lights and mysteries. Now, how do I scroll this document? Is this, or do I have to allow somebody else to scroll it?
It's on my screen, so.
Oh, it's on your screen. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, actually, maybe what we should do is just flip over.
Yeah, you can take it back over.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Oh, how do you do such a thing? Oh, well, let's not bother with it. You can drive, because I can't figure out how to take over the wheel. So he says it encompasses all existing realities and receives its share of the lights and mysteries of God. It is an all-knowing power, not a power of investigation. It knows, it's an innate, in other words, it's intuitive. It's not a power of investigation and sensing. The spiritual power associated with the world of nature is a power of investigation. And it is through investigation that it discovers the realities and properties of things. But the heavenly intellectual power, which is beyond nature, encompasses, knows, and comprehends all things, is aware of the divine mysteries, truths, and inner meanings, and discovers the hidden verities of the kingdom. This divine intellectual power is confined to the holy manifestations and day springs of prophethood. A ray of this light falls upon the mirrors of the hearts of the righteous, that they may also receive, through the holy manifestations, a share and benefit of this power. Such an important thing for us to realize that we have a living connection with the manifestation of God. The more we trust in the manifestation and turn to the manifestation, the more we benefit from the inspiration that comes through him, and that is what enables us to see things in their true relation. So let's go now. This is commentary by Peter Terry here, which I should put in a different font so that you can distinguish it from my compilation, which is almost entirely quotations from the texts. But I wanted to now bring you to a very interesting point. We have limited time left, so let's go right to it. If you go down bit further, keep going. All right. Now here you have a very interesting thing. This is the Guardian describing the principle of the agreement of religion and science. All right. And he's citing the list of principles that Abdu'l-Baha talked about in North America in 1912. This is found in God Passes By. And one of the principles, he says, is the harmony which must exist between religion and science. Now, let's go scroll down a little bit more. And we find a tablet of Abdu'l-Baha, which is in selections from the writings of Abdu'l-Baha, number 71. And it says, For every era hath a spirit, the spirit of this illumined era lieth in the teachings of Baha'u'llah. For these lay the foundation of the oneness of the world of humanity and promulgate universal brotherhood. They are founded upon the unity of science and religion and upon investigation of truth. Well, that certainly seems to agree with what the Guardian just said, right? The harmony and the unity seem to be the same thing. Now, here's another one. And this is interesting because this one could be interpreted differently. It says, among the teachings of Baha'u'llah is that religion must be in conformity with science and religion so that it may influence the hearts of men. That's a different idea. One is about harmony and unity. The other one is that it mustn't be in conformity in order to influence people. Very interesting. All right. Now, we come to 3 talks of Abdu'l-Baha in promulgation of universal peace. And remember, up until now, we've been dealing with tablets and the writings of Shoghi Effendi, all of which are what we call fully canonical. There's no doubt about their accuracy. There's no doubt about, are these the exact words that Abdu'l-Baha said, or that Abdu'l-Baha wrote, or that Shoghi Effendi wrote? No doubt at all. Now we're going into the sort of a little bit more sort of iffy territory, because they're talks, and the talks are given in Persian, and then they are translated by somebody. Nowadays it works just the same way as it used to. You have somebody who's a professional translator, and they translate as you speak. And then you had somebody who was recording it. So in this particular talk, if you scroll down, you'll see where it was. I wanted to pick them chronologically because it's helpful for some people to define things when it's chronological. So I keep going a little bit. All right. So this is a talk he gave in April 25th, 1912. You're going too far. I have to see that. Yes, that's perfect. It is evident that within the human organism, the intellect occupies the supreme station. Therefore, if religious belief, principle, or creed is not in accordance with the intellect and the power of reason, it is surely superstition. Well, that's very interesting, because that seems to be another idea. It seems to be another idea because he's saying they must be in harmony. But here, if religion is not in harmony with reason, then it's disqualified. Interesting. So here we come to the next statement of this principle. God has endowed man with an intelligence and reason whereby he is required to determine the verity of questions and propositions. If a question be found contrary to reason, faith and belief in it are impossible, and therefore no outcome, but there is no outcome, but wavering and vacillation. June 9th. We have one more. Just advance a little bit more. If the religious beliefs of mankind are contrary to science and opposed to reason, they are none other than superstitions and without divine authority. Okay, very strong statements, obviously. Reason is the discoverer of the realities of things, and that which conflicts with its conclusions is the product of human fancy and imagination. Okay? Now, here comes the real challenge. You've read those quotations, you've heard them cited in firesides, you've heard them quoted in all sorts of books and pamphlets and so forth, and then you come across this statement. Okay? And every branch of learning conjoined with the love of God is approved and worthy of praise, but bereft of his love, learning is barren. Indeed, it bringeth on madness. Every kind of knowledge, every science is as a tree. If the fruit of it be the love of God, then it is a blessed tree. But if not, that tree is but dried up wood and shall only feed the fire. Scroll a little bit more, please. Whensoever thou dost attend a patient, he's talking about a doctor, to a doctor here. Whensoever thou dost attend a patient, turn thy face toward the Lord of the heavenly kingdom, ask the Holy Spirit to come to thine aid, then heal thou the sickness. All right. What's in the driver's seat here? In the previous quotes, it looked like reason and science were in the driver's seat, but here it's clearly the Holy Spirit is in the whole driver's seat. Okay? So there's one principle we need to, this is going to be a multi-stage thing of deciphering here. One thing we have to look at is that when we have statements in the talks of Abdu'l-Baha, which are not found in Persian, there's no Persian transcription, okay? And they're not found word for word in a tablet for which we have a Persian original, then it has to be treated with caution. And Shoghi Effendi made this point in two quotations that are found in the Principles of Baha'i Administration. Baha'u'llah has made it clear enough that only those things that have been revealed in the form of tablets have a binding power over the friends. Hearsays may be matters of interest, but can in no way claim authority. This basic teaching of Baha'u'llah was to preserve the faith from being corrupted like Islam, which attributes binding authority to all the reported sayings of Muhammad. Now, the next quotation, nothing can be considered scripture for which we do not have an original text. I'm sure all of us have heard that, but the tricky thing is we have so much material for which we do not have an original text. And so it can be confusing. And I want to propose a certain way of looking at this. Okay? I want to propose that, first of all, what Baha'u'llah talks about so often, it's the major theme, perhaps, of the Kitab-i-Iqan, is that the scriptures have not been falsified by the believers and do not come to us in distorted or damaged or missing things. Baha'u'llah emphatically states that that is not the case. The problem with the interpretation of scripture is just that. Who's doing the interpretation? And what and how binding is their interpretation? And in the case of every religion we know of, the interpretations have been done by priests. They've been done by those who have been regarded as the leaders of religion. And the interpretations have often been wrong, and they have been self-serving. Okay? And so here's probably the most powerful quotation from Baha'u'llah on this subject in the Kitab-i-Iqan, because he's addressing a point that was brought up that was a cause of disunity amongst Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Because there were Muslims who were claiming that the text of the Bible was altered to remove any reference to Muhammad and to remove any material that could therefore benefit the Muslim. And this perversion of the text was a very closely held doctrine. It still is for Muslims. And he explains here, verily, by perverting the text is not meant that which these foolish and abject souls have fancied, even as some maintain that Jewish and Christian divines have effaced from the book such verses as extol and magnify the countenance of Muhammad, and instead thereof have inserted the contrary. How utterly base, vain, and false are these words! Can a man who believeth in a book and deemeth it to be inspired by God mutilate it? Moreover, the Pentateuch hath been spread over the surface of the earth and was not confined to Mecca and Medina, so that they could privily corrupt and pervert its text. Nay, rather, by the corruption of the text is meant that in which all Muslim divines are engaged today. That is the interpretation of God's holy book in accordance with their idle imaginings and vain desires. So we can move on to the next. I think this is again one of those wonderful texts of Baha'u'llah where, there's no wiggle room. He just said it straightforwardly. Let's go to the next. In one of his tablets, in two of the tablets that I'm citing here, one was in the Secret of Divine Civilization. The other one is another tablet, which is found in selections from the writings of Abdu'l-Baha. He talks about release yourselves from this blind following of the bigots, this senseless imitation, which is the principal reason why men fall away into paths of ignorance and degradation. And then finally in this other tablet, where he says that the root cause of prejudice, all prejudice of race, nation, religion, political opinion, is blind imitation of the past. Imitation in religion, in racial attitudes, in national bias, in politics. And he says, blind imitation of the past will stunt the mind. But once every soul inquireth into truth, society will be freed from the darkness of continually repeating the past. You see how bright and clear and conclusive and rational everything that Abdu'l-Baha is saying. And when you read Abdu'l-Baha, then you go back and read Baha'u'llah, and even if at first it went over your head because he's exalted and speaking to you from such a high station, you get it. You understand that he's saying the same thing. Let's go further, a little bit further. So in many of Abdu'l-Baha's talks in the West, he addressed this theme of imitation. There's so many references in promulgation. If you simply do a word search for imitation, you'll find most of them will pop right up. But they don't say anything that he didn't already say there in those two passages from his writings. I thought it's very, very important for us to understand that the Guardian addressed this very subject. Because in one of his letters, I can't see which letter it is because I can't see the bottom of this quote. Let's see where. Oh, yes. Okay. So this is the 28th of March, 1941. In the promised day has come. He made this statement. He said that the aim of Baha'u'llah, and I won't read the whole passage because we're short on time. His aim is to widen the basis of all revealed religions and to unravel the mysteries of their scriptures. He insists on the unqualified recognition of the unity of their purpose, restates the eternal verities they enshrine, coordinates their functions, distinguishes the essential and the authentic from the non-essential and spurious in their teachings. Spurious means wrong. It means made up. Separates the God-given truths from the priest-prompted superstitions. Powerful language. And then again, confirming Abdu'l-Baha in his comments of blind imitation of religious leadership in particular, but blind imitation of all kinds. And then Baha'u'llah previous to him, where so much of the Kitab-i-Iqan is about this very thing. Free yourself from the interpretations of the religious leaders around you and see things as they actually are. So it came to me when I looked at this and thinking about the sphere that when Abdu'l-Baha was giving a talk, whether or not it was properly, accurately transcribed, we don't know, and maybe we'll never know because we don't have a Persian original to compare it to. But it makes sense that he would have been talking about reason being incompatible with those teachings which are made up, And why? Because it's not reasonable that we should accept the authority of teachings that people added on after a manifestation. It's not. It doesn't make any sense at all when you think about it, and you see that theme in all the scriptures. The authority to pronounce, to distinguish between reality and unreality is in the hands of the manifestation. And all the followers must follow his lead rather than come up with their own ideas. Their own ideas they actually think sometimes that they're going to unite people and clarify things and enlighten them, because my idea is such a great way of looking at this particular problem. But we're wrong. We've been wrong for thousands of years. We've been following the wrong people. You got to follow the manifestation, and the manifestation and what he reveals. And so there is no contradiction in what the guardian said. I mean, what Abdu'l-Baha said with this principle, if you understand that he's not referring to divine revelation. Divine revelation is never going to be properly evaluated in the balance of reason or of science. The reason why is because it's so far superior. The manifestation has access to reality on a level that we don't. And he only reveals what he knows we're capable of understanding. And then, of course, we find that we're often incapable of understanding it, which is one of the reasons why he says its humility is so important. If we're not humble, how can we possibly continue to learn and improve our understanding of the truths revealed by the manifestations? So I think what we find is an affirmation of that reason and indeed science are going to help us to differentiate between those teachings of religion that are false teachings. There are accretions, there are additions, they're human inventions. And those, and you see in the writings, in particular, Shoghi Effendi talks about this, we must return to the sterling purity of the original teachings of all the religions. When we do that, we will find that they all agree with one another. And this, he says, is one of the challenges of the Baha'is, because we are in a position when we look at things through the perspective of the most recent manifestation of God, to differentiate what is true from what is not true. And truth is what unites people, not agreement. The followers of Adolf Hitler agreed, but they weren't agreeing to truth. The followers of Stalin agreed, but and Mao, they were agreeing, plenty of agreeing going on, but they were not creating unity. Not the kind of unity that Baha'u'llah wants to create, for sure. That unity is by choice and out of love. As he points out in the very beginning of the Kitab-i-Aqdas, he says, what are your obligations as a human being? This is not just for Baha'is, every human being. Recognize the manifestation and then obey him. Turn the page. Baha'u'llah often does this. He will give you a 1-2, and you think, okay, I got that figured out. And you turn the page, and then he brings in another thing when he says, follow my commandments for love of my beauty. And that is essential that there's love there. We're never going to have unity of mankind unless we love people, and we love our fellow, not just our fellow Baha'is, but love all the people who have strong faith in God. It's wonderful. Wherever they are in their journey, we need to accept them, and we need to support them, and we need to encourage them. We need to have fellowship with them. When we do, we distinguish ourselves because who else does that? Seriously, when I get together with an interfaith council, who's there? The religious leaders are there, and they're there to protect their boundaries, to say, well, we believe this and we believe that. But when do we have the opportunity to get together with people of different faiths without the priests around to tell them what to say, do, or think? That doesn't happen very often. We have to create those opportunities. When we do, we're going to have a big influence on the world, because people are going to realize these people actually practice what they preach. They talk about unity and love, and they practice unity and love. And that's what's ultimately essential. So I've given you my summation of this study, and Jeremiah is going to make it available to you somehow through the magic of the internet. And I
Yes,
would love to have the
I'll have it up on
opportunity.
the website.
Oh, that's great. It's going to be up on the website. You just go up there and download it. And I hope that,
Which
again,
website, Jeremiah?
What?
Clearwater Bahai's website, yes. And I will also have it linked on the video as well.
Awesome. So I thank you very much for showing up this morning and tolerating my absence. And I wish you happy and fruitful journeying in the study of the writings. It's the greatest voyage that can be imagined, at least in this life. And I'm very happy to be able to share some of my voyaging with you, all of you. So bless you and have a wonderful day. And I could see some of your names. I'm going to be seeing you very shortly.
Do you want to go ahead and tell everyone about that program?
Oh, I see. All right. Okay. All right. In collaboration with the Clearwater Baha'i, the Clearwater Baha'is guys, Jeremiah and John, and the support of the whole community there, in collaboration also with the Desert Rose Baha'i Institute in Arizona, the Firm Foundation Academy, which is a school that was established in Northern California for the intensive study of the teachings and writings, is offering to the public a series of Zoom classes. And we're doing our last of one of those series of classes today, starting in 15 minutes? Yes, I think so. Very soon. And we are, and then there are courses that are scheduled for the rest of the year, actually, and into January. And they're free and they're fun. We're having such a good time.
So how
And
do
we're
we
learning
join?
so
How do we
much.
find these courses?
How do you join? Well, if Jeremiah wants to put up a link to, I believe you have a link.
Wait, he
It's-
didn't do it? Jeremiah, there must be a link up. Where do we find it?
You might
So,
have, if you don't
yeah.
have a link already, I can give you a link to the landing page. Our landing page, which will give you a flyer for each of the programs that we're doing in the next few months. Now, if for some reason you don't get to that landing page through the link that he provides, I could tell you a very simple way to do it. Look up Firm Foundation Academy. Okay. Online.
Foundation.
Firm, FIRM, solid, firm, Foundation Academy. Look it up online. There may be a couple of announcements that come before my Firm Foundation Academy. They're Christian organizations. Good for them. They found a good name too. Just scroll down until you find the one that is firmfoundation.org. And when you get there,
Don't forget the hyphen.
yes, don't forget the hyphen. Exactly. When you get there, click on it, and there will be a banner at the head of the school, and it will point you to a landing page. And that will be all of the classes that we're offering for the next 6 months.
I've put the links in the chat, so if everyone just wants to go to the chat, you should find the landing page for the Firm Foundation, as well as the link for the document that we discussed here today.
Awesome. Okay, good. Well, we'd love to have any and all of you who want to participate. And like I said, I already see a couple of you who are already in who are taking our classes. And so it's been a great privilege and a joy to share this material with you this afternoon. And I look forward to our next encounter. Have a wonderful day, and Allow Paul.